Hey everyone! This week we want to talk about a simple style of jungling that is highly effective and incredible for climbing low elo. And just for the record, whenever we say low elo in this guide, we mean diamond and below. So we'll be learning from Hector once more, and this will be a complete contrast to that selfless jungle guide he was a part of where he was playing jungle Lulu. In that video, it was all about how to play for absolutely nothing but your teammates and why that can be very effective. The problem with that style of jungling is that it can actually be very hard to pull off. You need to have a lot of knowledge about all the lane matchups in the game, jungle awareness, primary win conditions, etc. Unless done properly, it can be very difficult to have results with a selfless style of jungling. Instead, for this guide, we'll be looking at a very simple, almost mindless type of jungling. It's so easy Hector was just playing, watching Netflix the whole time, playing completely distracted. There was no 200 IQ jungle tracking going on, no big brain win conditions being executed, just mindless pathing being carried by basic fundamentals. You may ask, why do you want to learn to play that way? Well, we're not telling you to turn your brain off, but instead focus on the basic fundamentals he follows that can have such great results in low elo. Before we get into it, we want to make sure you know that our website is the place to be if you're serious about improving. What you see on YouTube is just a fraction of the epic guides we create over at SkillCap. With over 800 guides and 100 courses, we're sure you'll improve. Before signing up, you can input your rank to see where we think you'll climb to. If you don't hit that rank while actively using SkillCap, you can claim a refund. Fundamental number 1 is to play a 1v9 champion. Now, this isn't exclusive to hyper carry DPS champions, don't worry. We'll show you how there's a ton of picks with multiple styles that could be considered 1v9 champions. Fundamental number 2 is to do nothing that doesn't immediately benefit you. In other words, be selfish. More on why and how to do this in a bit. And lastly, we'll be reserving our final fundamental for towards the end of the video. It'll make sense why once we get to it. It's really a whole section on its own. First things first, let's clarify what we mean by a 1v9 champion. It's not just super high DPS, giga scaling champs. As long as your champion meets both of the following two criteria, they can be considered a 1v9 jungle champion. 1. You need to be able to power farm. Plenty of junglers clear super fast, so this criteria is usually easily met. Just don't pick something with a super slow clear like Rammus or Amubu, who struggle to clear single target camps, or Elise and Camille, who struggle at doing AoE camps. 2. The champion needs to scale into the late game in some way. You can scale the late game in different styles. You could just be so strong that you run over everyone you encounter. Or go the assassin route, where you have so much kill potential on champions like Nocturne, Rengar, or Kha'Zix that you just kill isolated targets over and over and over and over again. Even some tanks like Dr. Mundo and Zac can 1v9 games. Once they have Cinder Hulk, their clear speed becomes top tier, along with the fact that they both do either very good single target damage like Mundo or insane AoE damage like Zac. On top of the fact that at some point both of them become unkillable teamfighting machines. They can just soak everything up to set their teams up to kill everyone while doing good damage themselves in the process. With the correct champion picked, on to fundamental number 2. Try your best to avoid situations that don't have immediate positive payoff for you. Let's paint a hypothetical situation. Imagine you're near Gromp and you notice that the enemy bot lane is pushing sort of aggressively. Would you just start full clearing your jungle, or would you detour to gank bottom? Let's consider the gank option. There's a lot of variables that could go into it. For example, when you walk down there, you could possibly be spotted by a bunch of wards. The enemy duo could then just easily back off in response to your gank. Or maybe you're being baited into a counter gank from the enemy jungler. Even if those possibilities aren't the case, sometimes the best case scenario is that you burn the enemy's flash and they just get away and live. But isn't getting a flash worth it? Well, yes and no. The problem with burning the enemy's flash is that you're just passing the baton over to your teammates. It's going to be up to them to punish the enemy's flash being on cooldown by themselves, or ideally they'd set up a lane state so that you can re-gank. Hector knows all too well why this is a terrible game plan to strive for in low elo. See, we tasked Hector to research a strategy we thought may be great for a guide on our website, using Nimbus Cloak alongside Hextech Flash. The idea was simple. You burn your opponent's flash with your own, then just come back to re-gank with Hextech Flash and Nimbus Cloak. Unfortunately, he tilted out of his mind playing this combo. The problem lied in the fact that you're playing a linear champion like Udyr and Zhao, who need to get ahead early and can't just power farm and 1v9 later. In this game, he traded his flash for Annie's. Instead of letting the wave bounce back to him so Hector could regank, Yasuo decided to spam shove the wave until he got ganked himself. Playing around your teammates and hoping they execute correctly around your pressure is perhaps not the best way to climb low elo. With that in mind, in that previous example, you're better off just going on with your usual full clear instead of wasting 20 to 30 seconds to potentially get a flash which you'll maybe capitalize on later. This may leave you with an immediate concern. Wouldn't your teammates just get ganked and die if you're never helping them? First of all, if they die, that's totally okay. It doesn't matter if your teammates die to ganks or solo kills. Just go to catch the lane farm and accelerate yourself to late game even faster. And 2, we are absolutely not telling you that you should never help your teammates or gank. In that previous hypothetical, there was around a 10 to 20% chance that you get a kill by ganking bottom. When you want immediate benefits for yourself, those are terrible odds. It only happens if your opponent horribly misplays and or you get lucky. But there's plenty of circumstances where going for a gank is really easy. Let's take a look at this Graves game. Hector is just clearing and taking his red. Then we look at mid. This is probably one of the most ideal ganks you will ever find. 1, she is super overextended as an immobile mage trying to get this turret plate. 2, Fizz is coming back into lane with ultimate up, which is a super reliable and powerful engage. And the icing on the cake is that even if this gank fails, it is on the way to the Scuttle, Gromp, and Wolves on the bottom side of the map. So not only is this a super high percentage gank, it's really efficient to pad through here anyways, so of course he ganks and gets the kill. With the kill secured, he can change his initial plan and look to invade instead, since he has both mid and top priority now, thus he can look to put some counter jungling pressure. The most important bit here is that while you initially will be unable to go for low percentage plays, you're opening yourself up to being able to help your team more in the long run. By accelerating and focusing on yourself, those 20 to 30% gank returns turn into 60 to 70s, and eventually they turn into 90, 100s, where you're just so strong that any fight you take is almost always going to result in a kill. So yes, you will eventually be able to help your team by just feeding yourself. Now, the most important part. The biggest issue low elo players face is having the mentality that they should always be doing and caring way too much about objectives. It's basically ingrained in everyone's minds at this point. Objectives over kills, group and do dragon, group and siege mid, get vision control with your team, etc. Almost any guide that tells you on how to get better will almost always tell you that you should focus on objectives or something of the sort. If you're a veteran of the site, you should know that Hector is our go-to smurfer for almost every role, and he thinks this is the biggest issue in low elo by far. The problem is that players are going and forcing objectives without really asking themselves why they're doing them in the first place. Let's go through the objectives first. Take Rift Herald. Why do you think it's such a powerful objective in high elo? Well, if you've watched gameplay at any competitive game, or just a high elo streamer, you'll find that very often they will drop Herald for their teammates and leave so that most of the gold gets funneled onto one person. The reason why is because of how itemization scales in League. You want to funnel your gold into one person because items in League scale off of one another. Let's give you a hyperbolic example. Would you rather have a level 18 Vladimir with 6 items, but he has 4 level 1 teammates, or 5 level 13 teammates, but each of them has 3 items? Even in this ridiculously extreme example, you can argue that the single Vladimir is more useful than those 5 players combined. This is because all of his items are scaling off each other. His Rabadon's death cap is scaling even harder from all the AP he's bought. The more AP he buys, the more relevant the CDR he's building becomes. The more health he has, the more time he has in fights to cast his powerful abilities. This is why junglers very often just give the fruits of their hard labor over to their laners. They want their hyper-scaling teammates to become gods with all that funnel gold, well, unless Leona wants to share it, of course. So if that's the main reason to get Herald in high elo, ask yourself this question. Do you really want to funnel gold onto your Platinum Zed, who is going to throw his lead anyways? Maybe not. Well, couldn't you just use Herald to snowball yourself then? Yes, but it is very unlikely and conditional on multiple things. The point of Herald is ideally for solo gold, but for that to happen as a jungler, your laner can't be in lane. You can't just walk up to someone's lane and say, "Hey bud, mind leaving while I cash out real quick? Okay, thanks." The most likely scenario in which your laner isn't in lane is usually if they're just dead. and if your laner is dead, well, you can't really herald the lane because their lane opponent is probably pushing it or something. We're not saying it's impossible to funnel yourself with gold using herald, it's just a bit inconsistent. Don't get us wrong, you should take free herald, but in low elo, the priority of taking it shouldn't be too high. It's okay if your opponent wastes time to take it. Okay, so what about dragons then? Well, we think that dragons in Season 10 are a completely pointless objective. We want you to genuinely think about the last time one of your games was decided off a dragon soul. If it was, were you going to win or lose that game anyways? Typically, if your opponent was strong enough to have 3 uncontested dragons in the first place, it just means you were already losing and couldn't fight them anyways. Hector hates this objective so much in low elo, we could probably make a montage of him muting his teammates whenever they ping or call to take it. The problem lies with the dragon system in the first place. All the buffs from the individual dragons are pointless. Absolutely pointless. Which means that the objective is only relevant when you get 4 of them. In an ideal world, maybe you take the first dragon at 5 minutes, then 10, then 15, then 20. In a completely perfect scenario, it takes you 15 minutes to get any value out of an objective you have to pour time and resources into, and you better hope it isn't Cloud Soul. If those conditions are met, you are winning the game anyways. More often than not, it takes around 25 to 30 minutes to get the Dragon Soul, because your opponent is likely to get 1 or 2 dragons throughout the game. Think about that. You're allocating precious resources for an objective that won't pay off until 25 to 30 minutes later. Why would you do that? Let's take a look at the horrible decisions people make around dragons in low elo. In this Karthus game, Hector goes for a high percentage gank onto bot lane. There are 2 overextended immobile champions, and he has a blitzcrank to initiate the gank. With a few misplays here and there, and then the unaccounted for Shenar, it ends up going 2 for 2 with Hector dying. Let's take a look at Olaf's response. We can see they're doing dragon because Diana jumps into the pit on the minimap, and of course because they eventually get it. We consider this a mistake. What do you think a better option for Olaf would have been? If you said take Hector's bot side jungle, you'd be correct. He even types it on the replay, finding it amusing that he wasn't punished for dying. Instead of leaving Karthus, a champion whose sole purpose is to farm and scale with barely anything to farm, Olaf decides to secure 10% ultimate CDR for his team. Nice. Let's observe how this plays out for Olaf later. He's killed and wasted time on Herald in the meantime, and has summoned it mid to do nothing, okay? Hector walks into the lane, presses E, and walks in the direction of the enemy team, missing every Q, but winning the fight regardless. All because he's been farming the whole game, hoarding resources. What exceptional talent. The next team fight that happens, Olaf is still 4 levels down, and the same thing occurs. Now Hector's team gets dragon, and oh, the game is over. The dragons were completely irrelevant in the outcome of this game. We're not just cherry picking a single game with a poor performance from the enemy jungler doing dragon. This is a very consistent problem. Let's look at this Nocturne game. Hector goes into Master Yi's jungle to counter jungle raptors and then Krugs. We see this was possible because Yi was wasting time doing dragon and then looking for a low percentage bot lane gank. This put Hector so far ahead of him in farm that he will still be ahead of Master Yi after being cheesed at red buff and then rage inting into the enemy team. They killed Tristana though, so worth, right? At the next 3v3 skirmish around mid, he was still a level ahead of Master Yi. Sure, it's not the only reason that his team won this fight, but it definitely matters. He would have been further ahead if he hadn't run it down out of pure tilt. Oh, and he gets a free dragon after the fight, making it unlikely Master Yi's team ever gets the Dragon Soul, and completely invalidating the infernal dragon Yi gave his whole topside jungle for. Let's give yet another example. Hector has nothing to do at the moment, so he goes for a low percentage gank onto bot lane. He overstays his welcome and eventually dies a stupid death near the dragon. Let's pause it here. The enemy is going to do dragon. Notice the time. Let's see how long it takes them to do this. Due to Fizz buying some time and being annoying, they don't take it until almost 7 minutes into the game. So 3 people had to sit on the dragon for around 35 seconds to take it. If you add it up, it took a collective 105 seconds of game time to secure this objective that does absolutely nothing. Imagine if they had all just left the dragon, gone back to their jungle and lanes, finished clearing the waves or camps, and then all recalled at the same time. Now they're all back on the map on full HP and mana and are ready to make plays as a team. We're not saying that's what would have happened, but that sounds like a pretty solid way of getting ahead. This is a major point of the video. Hector makes a lot of mistakes, but he is almost never punished. His opponents waste time making low percentage ganks or doing objectives that don't matter. Meanwhile, he autopilot farms to the point where he can eventually just kill anyone in sight by how strong he becomes. The simple combination of playing champions that farm super fast and not wasting time is probably one of the easiest ways to win as a jungler. And the last thing we want to touch on is that you can still do Dragon in the correct circumstances. We've trashed on it for most of this video, but if it's not a major time sink to take it, then securing it is totally fine. After the 12-minute mark or so, you should have enough DPS to where you can easily solo it quickly without disrupting your farming too much. Let's time this Dragon capture. It only took Hector 13 seconds to solo it. That's nearly a tenth of the game time it took for Jarvan's team to do it in that previous example. Or if your teammates are in the area with nothing to do, then yes, by all means work together and quickly take it. This one took around a collective of 30 seconds to do, but that's at least acceptable since it's not too much of Kalista and Sona's time. Alright guys, that's going to wrap up this video. Just don't tunnel vision too hard on the objective or die mentality many low elo players have. Think carefully about what you're fighting for and why, and use it to make smarter decisions. Thanks for watching.